Have you ever felt completely untethered, like life was just happening around you with no control? That's exactly where I found myself standing, on the edge of something I never saw coming. I'd just graduated college, done with exams, no job lined up, and no real responsibilities. It was that weird stretch where I should have been celebrating, but instead I felt aimless and worthless. My mind kept drifting. What's next? Why am I wasting my hours? Free time felt like a void, and the more I had, the more it squeezed me. So when my cousin Jake asked me to watch over his beach property, I didn't hesitate. Anything seemed better than staring at my walls in a panic. Jake's place, Shoreline Manor, sits 3 stories tall, a grand old house just blocks from the Atlantic. Every summer it swarms with people, loud cousins, clinking glasses, endless board games spilling from room to room. But now, nothing. No laughter, no music, just the silence of a house waiting to breathe again. Pulling into the driveway, I felt like I was stepping into a photograph. The tall dunes rose to my left, the sea breeze brushing just out of sight, and the sand crunching faintly when I imagined it. The house itself looked forlorn, wooden siding dulled by salt air, windows reflecting gray sky. Inside, the wind whispered through shutters' cracks. Each pipe groaned, and every floorboard creaked under my weight. It felt abandoned, but more than that, it felt watched. As I shut the car door, a chill ran up my spine. I realized this wasn't about passing time. It was about what the hours might bring in a place built for laughter, but now built for something else. I rolled into the driveway just before sunset, the late afternoon sky already dimming. The 2-hour drive up Route 1 felt like it crawled. I was keyed up and jittery, part excitement, part dread. I kept imagining that moment I'd pull up and see the house waiting. When I finally stepped out of the car, it hit me. The place looked deserted. Windows stared back at me like blank eyes. The whole building seemed to hang onto the dusk, refusing to come fully alive. I grabbed the checklist from my cousin Jake and started inside. I turned on faucets, water trickled, everything seemed fine. Breakers, locks, doors, all of it checked off. But as I moved through dusty rooms, I couldn't shake the unease. Every brass doorknob felt unnaturally damp, cold even, like someone had just touched them. Upstairs, I noticed footprints in a thin layer of dust. Someone or something had been here, and I'd missed it. And then I caught a whiff of something odd, briny, but stale, like seaweed rotting in an old jar. I followed the scent down to the old utility cupboard. My breath caught when a shelf rattled as if something bumped it when the breeze picked up through the cracked window. My heart pounded. I paused, trying to steady my chest. Every fan and pipe seemed to echo louder in the emptiness. I traced the walls with my fingertips, peeling paint, salt stains, the feeling that this house was breathing around me. In that moment, I realized the noise hadn't been wind, and the cup rattled again, louder. My pulse thundered. I rounded the corner. Nothing. Just shadows shifting in the dying light. For a second, I wondered if I should call Jake and bail, but I forced myself deeper into the house, checking locks and windows. The closer I got to finishing, the heavier the silence felt, like the house was waiting, watching my every move. By the time I finished checking the last room, the sun was gone. Shadows stretched long across the floors, and the corners of the house felt darker than they should have been. I stood at the front window for a minute, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one, and texted my sister, "Gonna crash here tonight." Too dark to drive. She sent back a thumbs up and a joke about me getting haunted. I didn't laugh. I made myself a quick dinner, mac and cheese, the lazy kind from a box, and ate at the massive dining table alone. I could still hear echoes of past summers, my uncle's loud laugh, someone shaking dice across the hardwood, my little cousin shouting, "Uno!" I even caught myself glancing toward the living room, expecting someone to walk in with a drink in hand. But it was just me and the silence. Thick, heavy, pressing in on all sides. It wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. After I cleaned up, I wandered around upstairs, flicking on lights as I passed each room. The third floor was out. I didn't even like the feeling up there during the day, so I chose the master bedroom on the second floor. It had a view of the ocean, a huge walk-in closet, and a bed that could fit 3 people. I locked the door behind me, more for comfort than safety, then changed into a hoodie and sweatpants. The room was too big, too still. I turned off all but one lamp and slipped under the covers, trying not to think about the rattling cupboard or those footprints in the dust. Sleep came slowly. Anxiety hung in the air like humidity. Something felt off, but I was too tired to fight it anymore. Sometime around 1 a.m., I shot awake. At first, I wasn't sure why. The room was dark, quiet, but something had yanked me out of sleep. Then I heard it. Bang, bang, bang. 3 loud knocks, like something slamming from inside the closet. My heart jumped so fast it made me nauseous. My first thought was wind, maybe a door left ajar. But that wasn't wind. It sounded deliberate, close, heavy. I laid there frozen. My body felt electric, buzzing with adrenaline, but I couldn't move. Not really. My limbs worked, but they didn't want to. It was like my brain and my body weren't talking to each other. I tried to sit up, to at least roll over, but the fear was like a weight pinning me down. I stared at the closet door. It was closed. I was sure I'd closed it before bed. But as I watched, it began to move, slowly, inch by inch. A long, creaking groan echoed across the room as the door eased open into blackness. I squeezed my eyes shut like a kid hiding under a blanket. I told myself to wake up, that it was a dream. Just a dream. Just... A floorboard groaned. I opened my eyes, just a sliver. Just enough to see. There was someone standing at the foot of my bed. Not moving, just there. A tall, dark figure. I couldn't make out the face. It was like the shadows clung to him. Like he didn't belong in the room, like he wasn't real, but he was. I wanted to scream. My chest was tight. My jaw wouldn't open. The only sound in the room was my heartbeat thudding in my ears. He didn't move. Not for 10, maybe 20 seconds. Felt like a lifetime. Then he turned, silently, and walked away. But not out the front door, not toward the stairs that led outside. He walked upstairs, to the 3rd floor, and I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, too scared to breathe. My brain was screaming, do something, run, move, call someone, but I couldn't. My entire body was locked in place, like I was being smothered from the inside out. I'd never known fear could do that, paralyze you like a spell. And all I could think was, I felt trapped in my own body, and something else was inside the house. It felt like hours passed, but it was probably just minutes. Then, suddenly, I snapped out of it. I could move. I gasped like I'd been holding my breath for days. My arms were shaking, but I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and fumbled with the screen. I had to force my fingers to work. 911. I whispered into the phone as quietly as I could. Someone's in the house. He was in my room. I think he's still here." The dispatcher told me to stay calm and stay hidden. I turned the lock on the bedroom door, backed up, and crouched on the floor behind it. My heart was thumping in my throat. And then, slam! The closet door swung shut behind me. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped my phone. A moment later, I heard slow, creaking footsteps upstairs, directly above me. I don't remember how long I sat there. Every breath felt like it echoed. Then, flashing lights, red and blue. Relief hit me so fast I almost cried. I bolted downstairs barefoot, threw open the front door, and nearly collapsed into one of the officers waiting on the porch. They didn't waste time. 2 officers rushed inside while I stayed outside, trying not to vomit from the adrenaline. I kept watching the door, expecting something or someone to come running out after them. But nothing. After 10 minutes, one of them came back out. "House is clear," he said. I stared at him. No, it's not." He went upstairs. I saw him. I heard him. They exchanged a look. The second officer said maybe I was just shaken up. Maybe he slipped out. Maybe I didn't see clearly in the dark. But I knew. I wasn't wrong. He hadn't left. That's when Jake, my cousin, pulled up. He must have sped the entire way. The moment he heard what happened, he stormed over to the officers. "Search again," he snapped. "I don't care how long it takes. My cousin could have been killed." They hesitated, but agreed. This time, they did it methodically. I followed behind them room to room. They opened every closet, tapped the walls, lifted up rugs. One of them even got on hands and knees, checking under furniture. They pulled back every curtain, yanked open every drawer. The tension in my chest grew tighter with each passing second. Jake stood behind me, arms crossed. "This house is old," he said. "There are crawl spaces, attic vents. If he's still here, find him." The officers exchanged a look, then one of them grabbed a flashlight and headed for the attic. And that's when they found it. Not him. Not yet. But something else. Something that made my stomach drop. While one officer searched the attic, the other stepped out onto the back deck. I followed, keeping a safe distance behind him. He swept his flashlight across the yard, into the trees, along the fence line. Nothing. Then he tilted the beam upward. My breath caught in my throat. There, perched on the sloped edge of the roof, was a man, just crouching. His skin was pale and sagging, almost gray. His eyes were wide, wild, like an animal caught in headlights, clothes hanging off him in wet tatters. Seafoam clung to his sleeves like he'd just crawled out of the ocean. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He just sat there, looking down at us, motionless, like some kind of drowned scarecrow. The officer called for backup. Within seconds, more lights were on him, voices shouting commands. They climbed up with caution, weapons drawn. And finally, they pulled him down. They cuffed him. He didn't resist. Just kept that same empty stare, like none of this mattered, like he wasn't even there. The police tried to question him. Asked him how he got into the house, how long he'd been there, what he was doing in the closet, on the roof. He said nothing. Not a single word. They sat him in the back of the cruiser, his soaked clothes squished against the leather seat. He stared forward, eyes glassy. I stood there on the lawn, watching him through the car window. My mind was spinning. How did he even get on the roof? Had he been living there, watching me? What would have happened if I hadn't locked that door? And most of all, why hadn't he run? The silence scared me more than anything he could have said. Because whatever he wanted, he was waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. The police stuck around for a while, just to be sure. They told me he'd probably been squatting, slipped in through a broken lock or an old crawl space no one had checked in years. Maybe he climbed up from the sand dunes out back. No one could say for sure how long he'd been in the house or how he'd ended up on the roof. Jake took it seriously after that. He spent the next morning boarding up every window, checking every lock, even hiding the spare keys in a tool chest he bolted shut. He offered to stay the next night with me, but I told him not to. I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. I thanked him, tried to act normal. But I wasn't. Not even close. Because no matter what I did, I couldn't get that image out of my head. That man crouched on the rooftop, soaked in seawater and shadows. And the way he'd just stared. That night, I decided not to sleep in the master bedroom. I picked one of the smaller rooms on the second floor, the one with the twin bed and the tiny closet. It felt safer, less space for anything to hide. I even wedged a chair under the doorknob just in case. It was quiet again. Too quiet. I laid there for hours, eyes open in the dark, until at some point, I must have finally drifted off. And then, 3:07 a.m., I woke up, heart pounding. There were footsteps, but not outside, not in the hallway, overhead. Soft, wet, sloshing, like someone walking across soaked wooden beams. Then a sound from the closet. Thump. The door rattled just once, then again, harder. And then, above me, something began to drag. Slow, steady. A scraping sound, like fingernails or bones pulling across the ceiling. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared up, frozen. That was when I knew. He never left. There's something about old beach houses that hold on to time, like they breathe memories when the tide comes in. My uncle left me his place on Cape Cod after he passed last spring. It's small, a little weather-worn, but to me, it's perfect. That house always felt like freedom growing up. The kind of place where summers stretched forever, and you could fall asleep to the sound of waves and the creak of old floorboards. The air always smelled like cedar and salt. Even just unlocking the door felt like coming home. So when my best friend Alex had a break from work, I invited him up for the weekend, late August, right before the crowds disappear and the town goes quiet. I don't know. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe I was just imagining things. But even that first day, something felt different. We got to the house just as the sun was setting, that golden light making everything look warm and soft. We unloaded the bags, tossing them onto the creaky old floor. Outside, I thought I heard a faint laugh or maybe a whisper carried by the wind, but the waves crashing drowned it out. Probably just my imagination. Later that night, we grabbed some fishing poles and headed down to the shore under the moonlight. The water was calm, and the air was cool. We ran into two local girls walking along the beach. Nothing serious. Just some light conversation and teasing smiles. It felt normal, like any other summer night. Back inside, the wind started picking up, rattling the shutters like a warning. Alex and I noticed, but just shrugged it off, telling ourselves it was nothing. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the soft creak of footsteps upstairs. My heart skipped a beat. I shook Alex awake, and we grabbed a flashlight, moving cautiously down the hallway. No one was there. But one bedroom door, it was cracked open, just a little. My chest tightened. We told ourselves it was just the wind, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, we decided to go for a run along the dunes. The sun was already warm, but a cool breeze from the ocean kept things bearable. As we ran, I noticed seashells cracked open along the path. Nothing unusual, except for some tiny red stains on the sand. I stopped, staring at them, but couldn't figure out what they were. They didn't look like rust or seaweed. When we got back to the house, that's when things got worse. Muddy footprints, bare feet with wet sand stuck in the creases, were scattered across the living room floor. They looked fresh. My stomach twisted. I started wiping them away, trying to calm myself. Alex said it might be some stray animal wandering inside, but I wasn't so sure. Nothing else seemed disturbed, but the footprints were too clear. I found myself glancing around more, heart pounding. Every creak made me jump. Even Alex, who's usually calm, kept shooting nervous looks at the stairs. At lunch, we tried to laugh it off, but I caught him staring up the hallway like he was waiting for something. And honestly, so was I. That second night, I was just drifting off when a sharp, high-pitched beeping tore through the silence. At first, I thought it was a smoke alarm, but there was no smoke, no smell of fire. Just that piercing sound cutting through the dark. My heart jumped, and I shook Alex awake. We scrambled out of bed and rushed upstairs, flashlight in hand, searching for the source. That's when I spotted it. A small black device sitting on the windowsill in the spare bedroom. It wasn't a camera or a microphone, just this weird little box with a blinking red light and a relentless beeping noise. Curious and terrified, I flipped the switch off. The beeping stopped instantly. I flipped it back on. The shrill noise blasted through the room again. It hit me. Someone put this here. Someone had been in the house with us. The thought slammed into me like a punch. Panic rose fast. Alex grabbed his phone and dialed 911, voice trembling. Meanwhile, I shoved a chair under the hallway doorknob, trying to block the way. My hands shook so bad I could barely hold the flashlight steady. Every second felt stretched, my breath shallow and quick. Fear wrapped around me like ice, and I kept waiting for something else to happen. The police showed up pretty fast after Alex's call. They took us seriously, which was a relief, but also made everything feel even more real. They started a full sweep of the house, moving carefully from room to room while we waited downstairs. When they came back, their faces were grim. Upstairs, every single window was wide open, even the bathroom ones. The curtains had been ripped inward, like someone had forced their way through. One bedroom looked completely trashed, dresser drawers pulled out and emptied. The mattress flipped over like a wild storm had passed through. But there were no fingerprints, no sign of anyone hiding, just this chaotic mess that didn't add up. But inside me, everything collapsed. I sank to the floor, my legs shaking. Alex grabbed my hand tight, like if he didn't hold on, we'd both fall apart. The officers warned us to make sure all the windows were locked from now on and told us to stay somewhere else if we could. We wanted to, but we had nowhere to go. We were too shaken to stay, too scared to leave. We decided to tough it out and stay one more night, planning to leave first thing at dawn. Exhausted, I finally drifted off to sleep in the dark silence. But around 5 a.m., something woke me, a cold chill crawling down my spine. I reached over, and Alex's side of the bed was empty. Then I heard it, soft footsteps downstairs. Heart pounding, I crept to the hallway, peeking out toward the front window. Two small silhouettes stood there, just staring in. When they turned, I saw their faces, kids, grinning wide, their bare feet muddy and dripping with red sand. Before I could even scream, they disappeared, vanishing into the crashing surf outside. I bolted downstairs, searching frantically. No footprints, no sign of them, only wet sand slowly melting into the wood floor. As I packed my bag at sunrise, one terrifying thought hit me. The red stains weren't seaweed, and the tide never brought those children in. I never thought a simple weekend getaway could turn into something I'd never forget, or something that still haunts me years later. If you're into creepy beach stories, this one might just get under your skin. So, I'm 24 now, just out of college, and honestly, I was ready for a break. Life felt like the same thing on repeat. Work, sleep, maybe hang out with a few people. Rinse and repeat. I needed to get out, clear my head, and maybe make some memories that didn't involve staring at my phone or stressing over emails. That's when my friend Megan invited me and a couple of our college buddies to spend a weekend at her family's beach house in Cape Cod. It was supposed to be this quiet, private spot away from all the noise, just sand, ocean, and some good company. Megan made it sound like paradise. Peaceful, relaxing, and perfect for unwinding after the craziness of graduation and starting real life. I was excited, maybe a little too eager. I packed my bags without a second thought, ready to escape my routine and enjoy a few days of sun and sea. Little did I know, those few days would change everything. We arrived just as the sun was starting to dip, casting a warm orange glow over everything. The beach house was huge, like way bigger than I expected. It sat alone on a stretch of sand, completely isolated from any neighbors or other buildings. The design was super modern, all sleek lines and glass walls that reflected the ocean. It looked like something out of a fancy magazine or those luxury real estate shows you binge watch. At first glance, it was peaceful, too peaceful almost. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only people in the world. The porch wrapped all the way around, with comfy chairs facing the water. We all took a minute just staring out at the waves, thinking about how lucky we were to be there. Then Mrs. Delaney showed up. She was the housekeeper, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a quiet voice. She greeted us politely, but didn't seem like the warmest person ever. Right after introductions, she started laying down some rules. No parties, no strangers on the property, and definitely no wandering down to the beach after dark. She said it with this strange seriousness, like she wasn't joking or exaggerating. We all exchanged looks, trying not to laugh. Megan rolled her eyes and told Mrs. Delaney thanks, but that we'd be fine. Honestly, none of us wanted to deal with a list of rules on vacation. We had plans to relax, maybe have some drinks, and just enjoy ourselves. So we nodded politely but agreed to ignore the warnings. I didn't think much of it at the time. Rules were meant to be broken, right? What could possibly go wrong? That first night, everything seemed normal at first. We spent the evening sitting around the fireplace, laughing and sharing stories, the ocean just a few steps away. But as the night wore on, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. Around midnight, I heard noises coming from the attic, like soft footsteps or maybe someone pacing. At first, I thought it was just the house settling or maybe an animal trapped up there. But then, I caught sight of the lights flickering in the hallway. Even though none of us had touched the switches, the bulbs would brighten, then dim, like someone was playing with them. I tried to brush it off and even joked about it to the others, but the truth is, I felt like someone was watching us, like invisible eyes tracking our every move. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up every time I caught a shadow moving out of the corner of my eye. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That night, I had the most vivid dream I've ever had. A woman stood at the edge of the beach, her silhouette barely visible in the moonlight. She was calling my name, softly at first, then louder and more urgent. I tried to walk toward her, but the sand kept swallowing my feet, and I couldn't move. When I woke up, my heart was pounding, and I felt like I hadn't really left that beach. I told Megan and the others about the noises and the dream, but they just laughed it off. Megan said it was probably just the old house making noises, and dreams like that happen when you're stressed. Still, the feeling didn't go away. Even though we kept telling ourselves it was nothing, there was this tension hanging over the house, like a storm waiting to break. We tried to stay busy during the day, but when night fell, the unease came creeping back. None of us wanted to admit it out loud, but I think we all felt it. The house wasn't as empty as it seemed. The next afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to explore the attic, partly because of the noises from the night before and partly because I wanted to prove to myself there was nothing to be afraid of. The attic was dusty and cluttered with old furniture and boxes covered in cobwebs. As I sifted through some of the stuff, I found an old leather-bound journal wedged between a stack of yellowed newspapers. The name on the front was Eleanor Blackwood, the house's previous owner. I flipped it open and almost immediately got sucked into her world. Her handwriting was neat, but shaky in places, like she was writing in a hurry or maybe under some kind of stress. The journal was full of entries about her obsession with the ocean. She believed the sea held a secret, something that could grant immortality, a way to live forever by making an offering to the water. Some pages described her experiments, rituals she performed alone on the beach at night, chanting and lighting candles, but the last entry was the most disturbing. It talked about a sacrifice, a necessary offering of guests to the ocean to keep the power alive. She wrote about how every 100 years the sea demanded a price, and how she was preparing for the next one. I showed the journal to Megan and the others later that night. We all sat around the fireplace reading it out loud, and at first we laughed it off like it was some old horror story or a prank by the previous owners. But even as we joked, I could see the unease growing on everyone's faces. The air in the room felt heavier, like the words on those pages had opened a door we didn't want to step through. No one wanted to admit it, but the journal made everything feel more real, more dangerous. The beach house wasn't just a vacation spot anymore. Something dark was waiting beneath the surface. That second night, we decided to push our nerves aside and have a bonfire on the beach. The salty air was crisp, and the fire crackled as we roasted marshmallows and tried to laugh away the weird feeling that had settled over us. For a while, it felt like just another fun night with friends, until midnight started creeping closer. That's when everything changed. The air grew heavy and cold, even though the fire was still burning bright. We all fell silent, listening. From somewhere out over the water, we began to hear low chanting. It was soft at first, barely more than a whisper carried by the waves, but it grew louder, unnerving and steady, like a dark lullaby. We looked out into the ocean, and that's when we saw them. Figures slowly emerging from the water, their shapes barely visible through the moonlit mist. At first, we thought it might be people swimming or some late-night fishermen, but their movements were too deliberate, too unnatural. They didn't splash or call out. They just walked, as if the sea was carrying them forward. Panic slammed into us all at once. Megan screamed for us to run, and we scrambled back toward the house, adrenaline pushing our legs faster than we thought possible. But when we got to the front door, everything felt wrong. The lock clicked shut behind us, but we never touched it. The windows, which were supposed to open easily, were stuck tight, refusing to budge no matter how hard we pulled. The air inside the house was thick, like the ocean had followed us in. The smell of salt was overpowering, and a cold breeze whispered down the halls, even though all the doors and windows were closed. The walls felt closer, the shadows deeper. It was like the house itself had turned against us, trapping us inside. We huddled together, heartbeats pounding, eyes darting toward every creak and flicker of light. We were no longer guests. We were prisoners, and the sea was coming for us. By the time dawn started to break, we knew we couldn't stay trapped in that house any longer. We tried every door and window again, desperate to get out, but something invisible was blocking the driveway. No matter how hard we pushed, we couldn't open the gates or move the cars. It was like some unseen force was holding us prisoner. Then, out of nowhere, Mrs. Delaney appeared in the hallway, her usual calm replaced by something colder, more serious. She looked at us with eyes that seemed almost different. She wasn't just the quiet housekeeper we thought she was. She told us who she really was. A descendant of Eleanor Blackwood, the same Eleanor whose journal we found. Mrs. Delaney explained that the house was cursed, bound to the sea and to the dark powers it held. She told us the ritual wasn't just a legend, it was real. Every 100 years, the ocean demanded a sacrifice to keep the spirits calm and the curse from spreading beyond the house. We were those sacrifices. We weren't visitors or guests. We were the chosen. The weight of her words crushed the room. Fear twisted inside my chest. Megan, Sarah, and I looked at each other, horror dawning on all our faces. We weren't going to leave. Not unless the ritual was completed. Panic took over. We tried to run, but Mrs. Delaney moved faster than anyone expected, blocking our path with a strength that felt unnatural. The house seemed to shift around us, twisting hallways and locking doors as if it was alive, trying to keep us contained. We fought with everything we had. Chairs were thrown, doors slammed, and screams echoed through the rooms. But the house, and whatever power controlled it, was winning. It was like struggling against the tide itself. The more we resisted, the tighter the grip became. I remember my heart pounding, sweat burning my eyes, and the cold that seeped into my bones despite the chaos. This wasn't just a fight for fun or pride, it was a fight for survival. And deep down, I feared we might not win. In that moment, with my lungs burning and adrenaline flooding every nerve, I knew I had to get out, no matter what. The front door was locked tight, and the windows wouldn't budge. So, I did the only thing left. I grabbed a heavy lamp from a nearby table and smashed it against one of the smaller bedroom windows. Glass shattered everywhere, cutting into my hands, but I didn't care. I crawled through the jagged opening and tumbled onto the cold sand outside. The air hit me like a wave, sharp, salty, and freezing. Behind me, the house groaned, as if it was angry I had escaped. I sprinted toward the woods beyond the beach, the trees thick and shadowed, but I didn't slow down. The ocean roared louder in the distance, a deep, menacing sound that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. It felt like the sea itself was waking up, angry and hungry. I dared to look back once, and what I saw still haunts me. A massive wave, towering and dark, rose up like a living monster. It crashed over the beach house, swallowing it whole. The sleek, modern walls disappeared beneath the water as if the house had never existed at all. I blinked, unsure if I was dreaming or losing my mind. After running through the woods, I found Megan and Sarah, huddled behind some trees, wide-eyed and shaking. We didn't say much. Words felt useless. We were just relieved to be alive, to be away from that cursed place. But deep down, we all knew none of us would ever be the same. We made a pact to never talk about what happened, to lock the memories away and pretend it was just a bad dream. But I couldn't let it go that easily. I still have Eleanor's journal tucked away in my drawer. It's a reminder that some places hold darkness you can't run from, no matter how far you go. And sometimes, the ocean doesn't forget.